Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast, the show that takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible.
Welcome to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. I am back with some more information for you to live your life to the fullest and happiest and just create the life that you've always wanted. And I'm excited about today's episode. Today I'm going to be talking about accepting change because change is inevitable. And, you know, some people really like change. Some people really don't like change. And I think it kind of depends on a few different factors, whether you like it or you don't. Of course, there's so many different reasons why you could and you can't. Some change we can control and some change is completely out of our control. And when change is out of our control, yeah, it's definitely not as easy to like, right? So today I want to talk about accepting change in basically every form, because whether you like it or not, change is inevitable. It's going to happen in your life constantly. Change is actually one of the few constant things that we have in life, it's crazy, but it's true. And change is going to be constantly happening to you throughout your entire life. Change happens to you every single day. It's inevitable. That's really all I can say, right? So accepting it, though, can be the most difficult part, especially when something was such a huge part of our life or was our life for so long, and then all of a sudden that door has closed, that chapter has ended, and we have to move on. And moving on is difficult, and accepting that change and moving on and understanding that, you know, this is how it's supposed to be, this is how life is, this is, you know, I am on the right path, like that can be really hard to understand and get your head around when there's just so much going on and when change is so drastic, because it's completely out of our comfort zone 9 times out of 10, right? And I say so often that we only grow when we are pushed outside of our comfort zone, and change pushes us outside of our comfort zone, which is why it's so scary, but which is why it's also so crucial to our personal growth and the way that we live our life and being happy and living life to the fullest. So we have to understand to accept change, learn how to do that properly so that we can accept, you know, the things that happen in our life and move forward. I find that sometimes change will happen and they freeze up, they don't know what to do, they don't know what their next step is, and it's really hard to let go of those things. And I've talked a lot about letting go of things and trying to move on, and of course I think the key to that is just accepting, you know, the event or the thing that has happened. And once you can fully accept that, then I think that can make a huge difference in your life. Sometimes we love the transformation. It's like, yes, you know, I feel so good. I moved out of my small town, or I left my toxic relationship. But of course, every high has its low, as we all know. And so today I'm going to be talking a lot about, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks, of course, of how to accept change, things that you can kind of do, when change happens to help you accept it a little bit more. I'm going to talk just a little bit more of what change is bringing to your life, which kind of makes it easier to accept it. Because I find that once we know kind of why something's happening, of course it's easier to accept it then. But 9 times out of 10, we don't actually get to know why, that change is happening maybe until later on down the road. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But then lastly, near the end of the episode, I am going to talk about the one thing that I have done in my life, especially recently, that has made a world of a difference for accepting change. It is my one crucial tip that works for me, and I'm going to save it to last. So don't go anywhere. That's going to be coming up near the end of the episode. But right now, I'm just going to talk about how we can accept change. So change and transformation is such a beautiful thing. But when we are uncomfortable, we're growing, right? Of course. And so in the long run, it is a good thing, but it's really hard to understand that, especially initially or when this event or change happens at the beginning. So most of the time at first, we feel very uneasy about things. We could be very scared. And this can actually lead us to feeling like we made a mistake. Maybe like things shouldn't have changed, especially if you are the one that changed them. I think that is one of the worst feelings in the world, is when you make a drastic change in your life and then all of a sudden you feel like, oh my gosh, did I do the right thing? Like, did I let go of that too soon? Or was I never supposed to let go of that? Or was I never supposed to make that move or do that change in my life? And I find that we sometimes feel like we made a mistake when we get reminded of that chapter in our life. So when we close a chapter in our life, or when we close a door to our life and we're trying to move on, and maybe we're feeling good about the change for a while, most of the time, sometimes we are, especially if we decide we're in control of that change, we feel good about it right away, right? We're like, this is exciting, this is new, this is good for me, this is good, I'm on a high. But then something happens that reminds you of that past chapter, or that thing that you had to let go of, that event that changed, and it makes, all these emotions come flooding back, and it makes you think about so many different things that maybe you normally wouldn't think about, or you wouldn't, or you haven't thought about in a while. And so it makes you think that you made a mistake, or that you went down the wrong path, or, maybe you feel a little bit of regret or resentment. But I promise you that is just, those old emotions coming back and trying to take control of you, because every single thing happens for a reason. And if you made a change and you wanted something in that moment, and you wanted it bad enough to make that drastic change, I promise you that was the right decision, because sometimes we don't understand that's the right decision later on, even if we feel like it is at the beginning, but it is. And that's going to help you move on from that and help you accept that change. So sometimes we need to accept change right at the beginning. This is often when we're out of control, we don't have control of our change. And so, we try to accept it right away, but we can't, and it's really difficult. Well, in other times, maybe we do accept the change at first, but then later on down the road, we feel uneasy about it. Like I mentioned, we feel like we made a mistake. So today's going to be talking about accepting change at every different step, all different forms of your life and different aspects, whether you need to accept change right away or you need to accept change later on down the road. Either way, we are always going to have to accept change, because it's always going to be happening. So when we feel excited about our change at first, something happens, then maybe it puts us in an uncomfortable situation. It brings memories from that old chapter coming back. We start to regret, or we start to overthink change. And overthinking change is probably one of the strongest qualities of myself that I would like to change, which is easier said than done, right? Sometimes we want to change things, but we can't either. That's a whole nother episode. But overthinking change is natural, especially when it's a big drastic change. Of course, you're going to overthink it. Is this the right decision for me? But like I said, if you wanted it at one point in your life, I promise you it is the right decision, because, and especially if you want it at one point in your life, when you're not making that change based on high-strung emotions, or because sometimes our emotions can kind of take control of ourselves, and we're not ourselves. We don't make the right decision sometimes when we're very sad or very angry or just not ourselves, right? But if you decide to make a change when you are in a good place, or when you feel like you're in a good place mentally and you feel calm and rational, I promise you that change is right for you. And so you have to trust yourself, which is scary in itself as well, right? Like, trusting ourselves can be so difficult. But if we don't trust ourselves, we're never going to stop overthinking change. And this all kind of comes down to trusting your gut, which is, it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when we're kind of clouded with heavy emotions and maybe there's some other factors that are playing a role. But things will come and go. People will come into your life and then they will leave. You'll fall in love and then you'll drift apart. And then you'll both find someone new, or you'll move different cities, or you'll find a new job, or, friendships come and go. All these different things come and go in your life. But change is literally inevitable. It's so constant. It's one of the only constant things that we have in our world is change. Think about it, like fashion trends, they're always changing, right? So fashion trends, social media things, music, TV, the environment, the weather, the economy, technology, society, culture, your friends, your family, your significant other, your body, everything is changing constantly, and all of these things are so apparent in our everyday life, or a lot of these things are, right? And we don't even pay attention to how often they are changing. Maybe the weather. We pay attention to how often the weather is changing, maybe, if you live in a climate like I do, where you experience 4 different seasons in one day. But other than that, sometimes we just kind of skim by the change because it happens so much and so constantly. We forget to pay attention to it, it's funny, right? And then when something happens to us in our life, a drastic change, an event happens, then we're quite aware of that change, of course, right? So change is constant. It is going to be there throughout your life, with things that you see in your everyday life to maybe bigger changes like getting a new job, breaking up with your long-term boyfriend or girlfriend, moving cities, all these different things, right? But it's constant, and that means that we have to accept it because it's not going away. Change will always be in your life. Okay, so it's time for a little bit of a break, but when we get back, I'm going to jump in to some tips of how you can start accepting your change. My first tip for you is probably one of the most crucial tips I'm going to be saying this entire episode. So stay tuned. We will be right back.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC Life and Happiness podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. So we are talking about accepting change, one of the most inevitable things in our life. Change is constant. It's always going to be happening. So how can we accept change? Because we need to move on. One door is going to close, another one will open, but how do we accept that space? How do we accept, closing one chapter and moving on to the next? Well, my first tip for you is stay moving. Okay, so when we experience change, especially if it's sudden, then sometimes we stop in our tracks completely and we forget how to move forward. Because it's such a drastic change, everything that maybe you once knew is gone. Or something that was such a huge part of your life is all of a sudden gone. So if you stay in one place, it makes it a lot easier to get stuck in that one place, right? So we can kind of get comfortable in our nothing zone, in this place of, well, I don't know what's next, so I'm just not going to move. I'm just going to freeze, right? We freeze up. We get anxious. We get worried, stressed out, and we just freeze, which is one of the worst things you can do because that means you might get stuck there. You most likely will get stuck there. So keep moving. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't give yourself some time to mourn or really let yourself feel, which is going to be leading into my next point, but yes, take your time, let yourself feel, but you need to try to keep moving. And I'm not saying you need to know what your next step is, and I'm going to talk about that later as well. You don't need to know what's next for you, but you need to keep moving in your everyday life. You need to still try to keep a normal schedule or a normal routine, whether, maybe you did lose your job. Okay, so now your normal routine is obviously going to be very different, but you still need to wake up every day, wake up at your regular time, make your coffee, make your breakfast, and start your day with something different now. Now you don't have your 9-to-5 job to go to, okay, but now you have a new mission to keep moving and working forward to, right? So keep moving, don't stay still. But my next point is always let yourself feel. So of course, we can give ourselves time to mourn, and we can give ourselves time to feel these emotions, because change is going to bring a lot of heavy, strong emotions. And will never ever tell you to just try to skip over those emotions or pretend that you don't feel that way. Let yourself feel every certain way that you want to, because that is so crucial and important. But try to find what's pinpointing, what's making you feel so uneasy. Is it just, change is stressful and scary no matter what, and it's okay to feel that way, and you should let yourself feel that way. But do some reflection of why maybe this change is making you feel so many different emotions. Are you feeling scared just because it is outside of your comfort zone, because you're leaving something that you were once so comfortable with? Or do you feel scared for other reasons? Are you sad? Are you angry? Why are you sad or angry about this situation, about this change or event? Whatever you're feeling is valid, because even though change is natural and it's inevitable, it doesn't make it any easier to deal with. So try to pay attention to yourself. Why am I sad about this? Why does this make me angry? Why does this make me feel uneasy or anxious? And the more reflection you do, and the more you understand where those emotions are coming from, I promise you it's going to make things so much easier to continue to move on. Now, this next tip is also probably one of the most crucial things I will tell you this episode, is understand what you can and cannot control. You can always control, or you can't always control events, but you can control the way that you respond to them. And that is the beautiful thing about life. Sometimes our emotions take over and it feels like we are out of control to our response, but 9 times out of 10, you can control the way that you respond to something. So set yourself up for success by learning how to respond appropriately to life events, big changes that are going on. And I'm not saying that you're going to be able to respond appropriately right away to this life event that's, no, that doesn't make sense, and it's difficult. I get that 100%. But over time, and when things continue to change in your life, you are going to start to understand better what you can and cannot control, and you're going to get a better idea of how to respond appropriately to these changes. Maybe you'll have one big drastic change and you do not like the way that you respond to it. That's okay. You're still learning and growing, and it was one big drastic change. But when the next change happens in your life, maybe you'll have a better idea of how to respond to it appropriately. Change will always happen, and it's in and out of your control. But the quicker that you understand that, the things that you do have control of and the things you don't have control of, it's a lot easier to move on or to keep growing and learning from that event and that change. Understand that change is one of the most constant things in life. I've already talked a lot about this, but, it's not just your life that changes, but like I said, fashion trends, social media, the environment, weather, technology, literally things are changing all of the time. But when we are hit change within ourselves, that's when things, we might start to freak out. You will change. Every single day you are changing, whether you see it or not. So understand that, grasp that concept, because that's never going to go away. Now, my next one is externalize the change. Okay, this might sound a little weird, but this one is so, so helpful in my opinion. Did you break up with your significant other? Okay, maybe it's time for a new haircut or a new wardrobe as well. Embrace the change this way. Sometimes we need a full life makeover. Okay, so you lost your job. All right, maybe now it's time to move to a new city and find a new one. Have a fresh start. Externalize your change. Change something about yourself that you can control, especially if an event happened or the change happened that you could not control. Try to change something that you can control, like getting your hair done, getting a new wardrobe, buying something new. I don't know. And you don't have to buy anything. You don't have to spend money to externalize your change, but change something that you can control. because it's going to make you feel more in control of things that you cannot control, or the big event that happened that was completely out of your control. So embrace a new chapter in your life fully. If you're going to have to get a new job, maybe embrace the whole thing and move to a new city and completely start over. Sometimes that's easier than just trying to, navigate this change or navigate around the change. Sometimes we just have to drastically get up and move on completely. I think there's nothing wrong with doing that. My next one for you is surrender to I don't know. So the first tip I gave you today was, keep moving, right? I'm saying keep moving. You can't stay still or else you might get stuck. But a lot of the time, change will happen and you're not going to know your next step. You're going to really have an I don't know what is going on in my life right now. And I think this is really, really important to understand that often when a chapter in our life closes, we are experiencing this change, it's really easy to get stressed out and it's really easy to get boggled down if you don't know your next move in life. If you get fired from your job or let go from your job, oh my gosh, that was my career. What am I going to do now? You don't have to know what you're going to do now to accept the change and move on. It's okay to not know what's going to happen next. You're not supposed to know half the time. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about life is that you never really know what's going to happen next. And life can lead you down a path that, you never would have imagined, like getting fired from your career that you once loved or something that you really enjoyed or brought you so much joy at one point. You're like, why did life take me off that pathway and put me on a new one? I promise you, change is asking you. This is what change is asking you. Change is asking you to learn new things. It's asking you to master new skills, develop new qualities, like courage, optimism, persistence, flexibility. It's asking you to close a door to a chapter in your life and open up a new one. So embrace that new pathway and a new experience, even if you don't know what's at the end of that path or what's going to be next on your journey. That is okay. Surrender to I don't know. Because if you don't, you're just going to be anxious and worried about your next step when it's not necessary. Now, I'm not saying sit back and do nothing. Like I said, you have to keep moving. So keep moving and keep being proactive in your life. But it's okay to not know what's going to happen next. Embrace the unknown. It can actually be one of the most exciting times in your life when you don't know where you're going to go next or where life is going to take you, because it's exciting to experience new things. Even though it's scary, it is super, super exciting as well. So if you can surrender to I don't know, you're going to automatically feel better about your change, because it's a perfect way to accept one door closing because you know another one will open. You just don't know when or maybe what's behind that door. Sometimes we have to make the next move ourselves, which I'm all about creating your own opportunities, because not everything can fall into our laps, but you don't have to. You can, be proactive in your life and keep moving on and embrace the unknown and learn to accept your change that way. So this plays a huge factor as well. So always surrender to I don't know. Externalize your change when you can. Understand that change is going to be so constant. Understand what you can and cannot control, and always keep moving, but let yourself feel your emotions. So it's time for another break. I do have a few more tips I'm going to add next up, and then I will go into the one thing that I do in my life, or I have been doing in my life, that has made a huge difference in accepting the drastic changes that I go through personally. So stay tuned. We will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast. All right, we are on the last stretch of today's episode. I have a few more tips and tricks that definitely work to accept change. And then I'm going to jump into a little bit of my personal experience of the one thing that I do. Okay, so my next thing for you is avoid asking the opinions of others. Now, this can be kind of hard because automatically when things happen in our life, we reach out to our loved ones for comfort and advice and their opinion, right? But when you're actually able to accept your change and understand it by yourself without having the influence of others of what maybe your next step should be or how you should accept that change or deal with the change, it can actually make a really huge difference in your growth, in your personal growth, because there's nothing wrong with asking for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for comfort and being comforted when something happens in your life. Life is tough. We need to be comforted and we need to go to our loved ones and ask for help and advice. And there is nothing wrong with that. But do not ask for an opinion that's going to influence the way that you are accepting your change and growing that way, because no one's really going to understand, how you feel except for you, because everyone feels things differently. And even if, your best friend also got fired from her job, it's still a different kind of feeling. And it's awesome that maybe you guys can relate on that and be there for each other, but you're also experiencing different things and your guys' next step won't be the same. So try to avoid the influence of others and try to really focus on your personal growth and where you're at and how you're feeling. Because at the end of the day, you have to accept the change, not anybody else. You have to be able to move on with your life. And so you want to be able to be strong enough to do that on your own. Not saying it's weak to ask for help, and it's not. I think it's very courageous to ask for help, and I think it's very important that we do get comforted by our loved ones. But it's also crucial for our personal growth to be able to do things on our own and not let other people's opinions influence something, especially when it's a major life event. Now, my next one is don't let fear rule you. Change is one of the scariest things, especially with a big, drastic life change. And it's scary closing the door to something that you once knew so well. Something that was such a huge part of your life or was your life for however many years, of course that is scary to let go of. It's natural and it's actually really, really healthy to have fear. Fear is natural and healthy, but you can't let that fear control you. You have to be able to be strong enough to accept and move on. Do whatever it takes to keep moving and embracing the positive side of things. Always try to look to the brighter side. And sometimes we have to push fear. We have to push, our emotions sometimes aside and understand that there is positive sides to things. There is beautiful things to life and everything does happen for a reason. So those are my tips for you that I have also been implementing in my life, and I find they really do work to accept change. But now I want to talk about the one thing that I've been doing, especially within this past year. I'm somebody who loves change. I make drastic changes in my life quite often. Most of the drastic changes I've made has been packing up my stuff and moving to a new city by myself, and I love it. It's exciting, and I think I'm already addicted to experiencing new cities constantly. Like, I am already looking forward to the next place that I get to live. And for me, that change is just super, super exciting. But it's because I'm in control of it, because I decide to move, right? I have been deciding to move, right? No one's made me do that. No one's made me do that kind of drastic change. And so, of course, that's exciting to me, and I like experiencing those new things. But of course, there's so many highs and lows within those changes, even though I am the one that made that change, that has done that. It's still hard to move to a new city all by yourself. When I first moved away, I was 18, and I just wanted my reasoning behind leaving my province, leaving my family, was that I needed a change in my environment. I was not happy where I was at, and I needed to experience different things to try to figure out what I wanted and who I was. And so moving to a new city was my answer to that, was getting a new environment, because our environments are so crucial to our growth. So that's what I decided to do. I decided to get up and I started to move. And that first move was one of the toughest things I've done in my life, because it was my first time on my own, first time living on my own, being in a new city, being away from my family. I had no family where I was at. I had to start a new job. I was completely on my own, but that was my decision. That was my drastic change. but it doesn't make it any easier sometimes, right? So I had a lot of highs and lows and things like that. And I went through a few years of living in that city until one day I was like, I need to move on to the next thing. And I decided to move cities again. And recently, this is what I've been doing because once again, I experienced so many highs and lows. But my one thing that has drastically helped me accept my change is going outside and counting to 10. So now you're probably thinking, seriously, I waited this entire episode to hear that one tip. Count to 10? Really? That's like the lamest, easiest tip in the book. Like, I know, but I seriously mean it. Go outside and count to 10. I love the outdoors, first of all, but I went outside just the other day, actually, and I went for a walk in this new neighborhood that I live in, and I looked around and I was feeling quite overwhelmed because I was really saying goodbye to an old chapter in my life and I was moving on to embracing where I was at now, right? And I was feeling quite overwhelmed and I stood outside and I just counted to 10. And, it's not just counting 1 through 10. It's also counting things that I am grateful for. 10 things that I am grateful for within those 10 seconds as well. And it sounds so simple and easy, but just looking out at this viewpoint that I was at and counting to 10 and taking a deep breath, it was like, wow, I am okay. Life has led me here. This is beautiful. I love the outdoors. And so just taking the moment to go outside and count to 10 and look at your surroundings. Pay attention to what is around you. And you're going to realize, wow, you know what? I am supposed to be here. And that was my realization that I had was all of the life choices that I've made, all of the drastic changes that I've controlled or that were completely out of my control, all of the highs and lows and things that I have gone through has led me to this beautiful place. And I am so grateful that I made the choices to be here and that those changes in my life happened to be here because I never really thought maybe I would be here. I never really thought that this was where I was supposed to be. But I am so glad that my life and my changes and my choices have led me here. Even if it's only for a stopover or for a small portion of my life, I am super grateful that I got to experience this new city and this new area and this entire new life event that was a huge change for me. And it was literally just going outside, taking a deep breath, counting to 10, thinking of my blessings, thinking of the things I'm grateful for, and actually truly in that moment I understood, I did make the right choices. All of those hard changes and all of those big drastic moves that I made led me here. And you know what? I'm alive. I'm healthy. I have great people surrounding me, my family, my friends. I'm on a good path. And I just took those 10 seconds to really, really, really understand that, yes, I am okay and everything happens for a reason. And so I was able to do that. I was able to go outside, count to 10 and understand that. But sometimes you're not always able to understand that. And you can sit there or stand there forever and count as many blessings as you can and just understand that you're healthy and alive and that's what's the most important. But sometimes we're still really upset about this event that changed, or we really don't quite understand why life has led us down this different path. So if you're not able to see positive or feel good about the situation, this is what I ask myself, because of course I have those times where I step outside, I count to 10 and I can't see the positive light. I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't understand why life led me here in that moment, and I'm still really clouded sometimes. So I ask myself, instead of, being negative or dragging on or just not, being happy about where I'm at, instead I ask, what kind of person do I need to be in order to achieve the best possible outcome with the situation I'm presented? What kind of person do I need to be? Do I need to try to change my mindset? Do I need to try to be more positive or courageous, outgoing maybe? Do I need to be more patient? What kind of person do I need to be? What thoughts do I need to think? Is the dialogue in my head proper? Am I talking to myself in a positive way, or am I talking to myself in a negative way? Oh, I hate this place. I can't believe I did this. Oh, why did I do this? This is, life sucks, all this stuff. Instead of, okay, I don't really understand why I'm here right now. Maybe it's not my favorite place, but how can I change those thoughts, right? How can I look at this in a positive way? How can I change the dialogue in my head to something more positive? What pictures do I need to visualize? What do I need to look at? Do I need some inspiration? Maybe I need to go to my inspiration board and understand, or go back into my journal entries and understand this is, I made these choices, or maybe these choices were made for me, but I still need to, visualize and grasp, the goals that I had, and maybe I'm not reaching those goals quite yet, but when you can visualize things that, hey, maybe this is just a stopover, I think it makes things easier. Or, so you ask yourself these questions, mainly, what kind of person do I need to be in order to achieve the best possible outcome with the situation I'm presented? What kind of thoughts do I need to have? What do I need to visualize? What do I need to remember? What do I need to remind myself of? And then you need to start showing up as that person and write these answer to these questions down. And I find that you will kind of get a better grasp of where you're at and a little bit of a different perspective on this change that was maybe just thrown at you. So go outside, count to 10, count your blessings, look at your surroundings, and understand that you're healthy, you are alive, and look at all of the good things that has happened, that life has led you here. And life has led you to this point for a reason. I promise you that. And for so many years, I never understood that, but I do now. That every choice, every change, everything that happens to us is meant to happen to us, and that it is going to be okay. And sometimes you just need to step outside, count to 10, and really understand that. But there's nothing wrong with also asking yourself, what kind of person do I need to be in order to achieve the best possible outcome with the situation? It's okay to not be okay with the change. Accepting change takes time. But anyways, okay, so that is all of the information that I have for you today. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that it, kind of brought you a new inspiration of how to accept new changes in your life, or maybe gave you inspiration to go out and make a new change. But like I said, please go outside, count to 10, count your blessings, understand you're healthy and alive, and that everything happens for a reason. And that is my biggest thing of how to accept change. So thank you so much for listening to GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. I so appreciate you being here. Doing these episodes just makes me so happy. It brings so much joy into my life. So I am so grateful for you listening. Please do not forget to hit that subscribe button so then you're notified every single time there is a new episode. Like and follow us on social media. We have a Twitter and a Facebook, and also we now have Instagram. So go check those out. I would love to engage with you on those. And then, of course, please do not forget to leave a 5-star review. The reviews are so awesome to read, and it helps out so much. So thank you so much. I look forward to sharing more information with you next time. Stay healthy, stay positive, and count your blessings. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find the show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast.